Hi, 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 and hey, hey, Beatle fans, and welcome to another edition of Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. This is a show that happens every 2 weeks, every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook page, and it's all about the solo careers of the Beatles. Once in a while, we will talk about them as a group, but for the most part, it's about John, Paul, George, and Ringo and their solo careers. I'm Ken Michaels, one of the regular co-hosts of the show. And I'm also known for my other Beatles broadcasts, Every Little Thing, a syndicated Beatles radio show, right now on over 40 radio stations. Also, another podcast show you might be familiar with called Things We Said Today. And also my very Beatles-centric website, kenmichaelsradio.com. And I'm being joined by my regulars here on the show. First of all, you know her as, without question, the ultimate queen of Beatles social media, and she is the author of Songs We Were Singing, Guided Tours Through the Beatles' Lesser Known Tracks, and Michael Jackson, FAQ, All That's Left to Know About the King of Pop. I wish she would have shorter titles in her books. But in addition to that, she is a contributing writer to Beatle Fan and lots of other publications. To know her is to love her. Kit O'Toole. Hi, Kit.
Hi, Ken. That was so sweet. That was very
That's all off the top of my head, and it usually sounds it.
Oh, that was that was very sweet. Hello, everybody. It's great to have the Fab Five back.
Mm-hmm.
That is right. They said it couldn't be done. It's always tough to get the five of us in the same room together,
Yes,
but it has to
indeed.
be virtual, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, let's bring on one of the co-hosts of a very popular Paul McCartney solo podcast called Two Legs. I can't keep up with this guy's activities because every single week he's got somebody else, a great guest on the show, and he co-hosts the show with Annie Nichols. They're doing a great job. Say hello to Tom Hunyadi. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Ken. Hey, Kit. Ken and Joe. So good to be with you guys. And I'm going to announce another new guest later on in the show. So can't wait to talk about that.
Okay. We also have Joe Mayo on. He's known for his very popular YouTube channel, known as being Mean Mr. Mayo, but he's anything but mean.
Correct.
If you listen to this show.
Very mad.
only after the show he gets mean with us, but while this is on, he's cool. But anyway, he does a lot of fantastic stuff on the Beatles and anything in the entertainment field. Talks about collectibles all the time. Just had a very special person contact him, which we'll talk about in just a few moments. Hi, Joe.
Hello, Ken.
Don't look surprised. You know who I'm talking about.
I didn't know you were going to bring that up on the show. Hello.
You do. It's something to be really proud of.
Yeah.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Doing very well, thank you. Hope you're all doing
Okay.
well.
And also we have our frequent fifth member, who you know for so many Beatle books, the Beatles Encyclopedia, a pair of books on George Martin, Sound Pictures in maximum volume, and also a book on the Abbey Road album called Solid State. And most recently, his brand new one, which is why we have him on, right? Although he's welcome on any of our shows, John Lennon, 1980. We're all holding it up practically.
And I love that cover. I have it in the other room. Want me to prove it? Love that cover. Good cover shot.
Only tonight, he's in the hot seat because we are interviewing Ken to talk about the new book on John and everything that he's covered in it, page by page, as a matter of fact. He doesn't know that yet. But...
We're going over each and every page of this book tonight.
Well, I'm proud to be with you guys. I'm proud to be the fifth talker.
Yay.
Yes, you are. Talk more talkers. Well, we're going to have Beatle news to get to, but before we do that, as I just mentioned a few months ago, just want to say congratulations to Joe, because on his YouTube page, he did a review, a nice review of the new Lennon compilation, Give Me Some Truth. And guess who tweeted him on it? None other than Sean Lennon, who, praised the video. So congratulations to you, Joe.
Yeah,
nice going.
Thank you. What a thrill, as you could imagine, being such a fan all these years of all things Beatles, solo Beatles. And I got to talk with Sean a few times. We conversed through email, and I just am really honored. And I really think it's nice of him to do that. Really, really cool guy.
It's got to make you feel good to get that
It
kind of
does.
acknowledgement. You know, he
Oh,
must be
sure it
looking
does.
over the internet to see how
Yeah.
it's being covered. But
Yeah,
knowing how
that's-
popular your video channel is now,
Yeah, yeah. For
you know,
sure.
you
I
get
got more
thousands of
subscribers
hits.
because of it. I think Sean sent some people my way to subscribe.
Okay.
Very
Sure.
nice.
Thank you,
Very
thank
good.
you, Sean.
I'm sure he
Thank
did.
you, Sean. Yeah.
He does have a network.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, he does.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, and he said specifically in that tweet how impressed he was with your, your attention to detail and your thoughtful review. And I mean, he was very specific in that tweet. So
Yeah, and not everything that I said, in the review was 100% glowing. I had no idea he was going to actually see it.
well, sure,
See
but
it.
still.
But no, that's fine because that's one of the things he told me that he enjoyed about it was that I was able to be critical about certain things, and then we had a discussion about some of those things.
Wow.
And he confided some things in me. I was surprised, some things he shared with me, and it was just really a great experience. And I was a little bit down on the packaging first. So we talked a little about the packaging decisions.
Did he say he'd get it right next time?
Well, I think no, I think he got it right this time after he explained it to me. So
Yeah.
I was talking about the repetition. I thought there was a lot of repetition. We'll get to this because we're going to eventually talk about the box set. And
Yes,
such.
we
This
will.
is Ken Womack's.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes,
moment.
this is your night, Ken. But for anyone curious, because I know we've gotten a few people writing to us, when are you going to review Give Me Some Truth? We're going to do that in our next show.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So tune in for that, just a couple weeks away. All right. But we also have to congratulate Ken because a few nights ago, he was on ABC television. And there was a John Lennon special, which is called His Life, His Legacy, His Last Days, and 2-hour special. And you were interviewed on there and thought you sounded great.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.
I really enjoyed the special, especially because of the guests that were on, all the people who were interviewed, especially the heavyweights like Jack Douglas, who I think was wonderful, Bob Gruen, Elliot Mintz, those people. Andy Newmark was a real treat.
Yeah.
But just want to find out from each of you what you thought of the special, because I think you all saw it. And Ken, since you were in it, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I would love a special. I think that's just Bob Gruen, where he could tell his stories of sitting around the butcher block table with John and Yoko, back in 1976 when Silly Love Songs was on, that sort of thing. And because he tells his stories so warmly, and he's really that kind of guy. I like him a lot. I would love to see that show. But that aside, I really enjoyed it until the second half.
Right.
Just to be brutally frank, nobody asked me how they were going to cut it. I would have loved half an hour just on the music. They obviously had the budget for it because they had some really nice footage that most folks don't shell out the dollars for. So it would have been nice, I think, to have more about the achievement of those songs and what they meant, as opposed to more of the true crime stuff, which I feel like we know that. And the only thing I would say is the saving grace for that is, the right doctors now getting credit.
I was going to ask what happened to Dr. Stephen Lynn footage in that.
Well, he didn't actually do any of the heart massage. That was actually Dr.
see.
Halloran. And he had been sort of masquerading all these years. And so it's nice to see, I guess the right doctors get credit, but I felt like it just went into the rabbit hole of the true crime story too much.
Yeah.
As opposed to why we all keep coming back, which, is what we talk about on this show all the time. And that is, it's the music. It's what John Lennon said over and over again. You don't need a Beatles reunion. You have these records and they're amazing. Play those.
Mm-hmm.
He said it over and over again. And of course, 40 years later, after his death and 50 years after the Beatles, he's right.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed how much they seemed to race right through up to 1980.
Yeah,
And
you could
Yeah.
really
last,
feel it.
so
Yeah.
much time was all about his death. But anybody want to comment?
Well, I didn't know going in that it was going to be 2 hours.
Hmm.
And I should just mention, just to throw, what's weird too, if I can add this in, it's interesting. I got the first email from Sean Lennon 5 minutes before the show was about to begin. So that was fresh in my head. And then I'm seeing footage of Sean Lennon as a little kid, and it was surreal in a good way. But I thought it was going to be an hour, and I was a little surprised when it got to the hour mark. I thought, oh, this is going to be 2 hours. And like Ken Womack said, I enjoyed the first half quite a bit. I do think Ken Michaels, I think that they did gloss over a lot of things and zip ahead to 1980, unfortunately. But I was enjoying what I was seeing and hearing, and it's always a treat to see the interviews with everybody, who knew John and Bob Gruen, as you say. Oh, always a treat. Maybe we can get him here on this show.
Hey.
He has a new book coming out tomorrow, as a matter of
There you
fact.
go.
Okay.
And
It's called
I'm not somebody who stays away from the history of, unfortunately, what happened to John. And of course, we all know there's plenty of those kind of documentaries. Some people choose not to watch them at all. I've watched them occasionally, but I didn't really feel it suited this presentation. I didn't know they were going to go all out and make it, like you said, like a true crime story or something like that. That was a surprise. I thought that kind of dampened things a little bit for this particular event, but it is sadly 40 years too.
Right.
Can I throw a detail in, and I wonder what you guys think? I felt like that was well trodden ground, except for the doctor business I just named. I thought it was good though when they talked about when they showed Yokos, and I've seen the footage before, as I'm sure you guys have too, staging the Season of Glass cover.
Yeah.
Because I think that's particularly authentic. It's sort of her Jackie Kennedy pillbox hat moment, and it that always resonates. So I thought that was good. But what a great moment that would have been to tip off back into the music and talk about the real legacy, which is her legacy too.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
I agree. I would have liked to have seen, more about the music, but a viewer here, Mark P, our friend Mark P, points out, and it's true, when it's 2020 doing it, it is, and it's particularly in recent years become a true crime, centric show.
Like
So.
Dateline and 48
Yeah.
Hours. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of not surprising that they went, in the second half toward, kind of a true crime angle. But I was just relieved that they didn't spend much time on the killer. I mean, that's what I was afraid of as it was going on. When I realized that they were going to spend a full hour on that, I thought, oh no, please don't,
Right.
but they really didn't. They focused more on the crime itself, not him. So I was relieved at that. And I thought it was a nice toward the end when they discussed, the different ways that he was honored, and of course talked about Strawberry Fields and they mentioned the Peace Tower and that kind of thing.
Right.
And I agree, Ken. I think talking about Season of Glass was important because, I remember how Yoko was really, really trashed about that at the time, and I think a lot of people missed her point.
Yes.
And just thought it was tasteless, and I get what she was trying to do, and I think a lot of people did, but a lot of other people she just got absolutely ripped apart for that, and I'm glad that there was some attention paid to that and some explanation. So I thought that was, but as you said, Ken, I think that would have been an interesting way to, maybe go into some some music. But and as far as the first hour, I mean, they did have to go over his career, and yes, I found myself saying, but you skipped over this.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess there was only so much they could cover in that short of time. I mean, it was going to be. I was kind of surprised they didn't talk about Imagine at all, things like that. But I guess there's only so much they could cover, and maybe it was for a different kind of audience. But Ken, you did. I mean, as always, you did a great job. I wouldn't doubt that. And as you said, Bob Gruen, great to hear from him. And as you said, you just know he's got so much more to say.
He really does. And while he's fortunately still with us, to capture some of that video that's a documentary that I think I'd like to see, or one with Jack. I mean, that'd be fine too. But
yes.
But certainly Bob, since he had kind of a longer arc with them, good times and bad.
Yeah.
I want to interject. Was Bob Gruen the one who is recording that interview in studio, 1980, candid footage of John, where you hear The Empire Strikes Back being mixed over the?
No, that's Robert Hilburn of the LA Times.
Oh, okay. That's a wonderful little piece. Even though you have to strain to hear it. And I saw in your book, you have quotes from there, Ken.
I got the transcript.
Oh, nice.
I couldn't hear it either.
There's a video up somewhere I saw once where somebody puts the words.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea because it is inaudible.
And there's gold in there in that little bit of footage we have, especially how he feels about Paul and talking about Paul and coming back so long.
My dear one.
Yeah, by the way, Bob Gruen's book is called Right Place, Right Time. It's coming out tomorrow, and it's photographs that span his entire career. So worth checking out. Tom, you want to add anything?
I just want to add that I had a wonderful time with my wife that night. We had a great date night. We had our masks on and everything, and we just really did the town. But I plan. Huh? Yeah.
I was wondering how that relationship was going.
Right. But I plan on watching it soon and look forward to it. But I'm amazed by what you got. I'm really excited to see it from everything that you guys pointed out. But as somebody that's a fan of documentaries and how they're made and whatnot. But Ken, I mean, how long ago did you record that interview?
I looked it up this morning. It was in the beginning of June. And
oh wow, that long ago.
A lot of stuff was on the cutting room floor. We did 4 hours.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
And, I spent a lot of time talking about the legacy and making sure I accounted for everything because I could hear my inner Ken Michaels over here like giving it to me if I didn't. So I made sure I covered it very fully. I did notice they asked me to narrate a lot of the years, and they used a lot of that in the show. You can hear me. It's kind of bizarre.
Right.
I thought I could hear you at they didn't mention it, but I thought I could hear you.
That could just be how I normally pipe myself into your head. And you may be confusing the two.
That's true. You're always in my head, Ken.
Well, I know because of the chip. So
yes. There you go.
Oh,
well, I also wanted to say that I enjoyed having Dave Sholin in the show, as well as Lori Kay. That added a lot since that was the last interview, the RKO interview. And they went out of their way to not mention the killer's name, although it was in one news report.
Yeah.
So, that was tasteful that way. All right, but let's move on with the latest news. Of course, October 9th, John's 80th birthday saw the release of the compilation, Give Me Some Truth, 36 songs in total from John's solo career, all remixed and handpicked by Sean and Yoko. The book that accompanies the deluxe edition has a listing of a Plastic Ono Band box set, the Ultimate Edition, which is comprised of 6 CDs, 2 Blu-rays, and a Plastic Ono Band book, which they say is coming out in 2020. Joe is showing it right there. But we're all wondering, will it really come out in 2020? I guess it all depends on whether it's being delayed because of COVID. And there is a preface in the book from Yoko, which is from June. So since COVID's really hit us around February, March, could very well be that plans are still for 2020. We don't know for sure, but at least we know for a fact that it is coming out.
Yeah. I'm a
But,
bit confused. Well, I'm a bit confused about the book and the see. I mean, because I thought the book came out the same time with the Imagine book. That came out in the same time with as the Imagine box set did. So I'm kind of confused why they would, still put out the book, but not the music set. The box set.
yeah, the
So,
book has now been moved
yeah,
to
to
what date?
November.
Okay.
November. Yeah.
So maybe
So
they will be
yeah.
coming out at the same
Yeah.
time. We don't know for sure,
Right.
but at least we know that it's definitely on for a Plastic Ono Band box set. But on this very subject and more was an article that appeared in recordingmag.com all about John's solo catalog being remixed. And Joe is covering this also on his video channel. The interview has Simon Hilton, the compilation producer for the Ultimate Collection series, interviewing Paul Hicks, the legendary mixer, engineer, and producer who's worked on Beatles and McCartney and Ringo projects, now working on Lennon and, they say, Harrison projects. And let us not forget that Paul Hicks has also been a part of the band The New Number Two with Danny Harrison. He's also, by the way, the son of Tony Hicks of the Hollies. And Sam Gannon is also in this interview, a mix engineer, producer, and musician. The article says that Yoko is the boss behind these projects, and Sean Lennon is listed as the executive producer and creative director. This article says that Sean has been giving incredibly concise and consistent direction throughout. It is a very interesting article, a bit on the technical side, but it leads one to believe that the rest of John's catalog is likely to be remixed. And it's also interesting just to see that it mentioned Harrison projects as well. So will his albums be remixed? Got to wonder about that.
Hope so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Money, money, money. There you go. Take it. Sorry.
And the Give Me Some Truth compilation has made an impressive debut on the official album charts in the UK, entering at number 3 there. Although you guys were telling me before the show that Sean has been posting something online that it's number 1.
The physical media charts in the UK
Okay.
is number 1. The basic chart is 3.
Okay.
They break things up, right? Different topics, physical media, regular album chart.
So many different charts. It gets confusing. But I did look before.
Media.
Yeah, I looked before the show to billboard.com. And so far, Give Me Some Truth is not on the charts yet. So it will be next week.
Okay.
Also
One thing
on
that
John's
Sean also
birthday.
mentioned, excuse me, Ken, excuse me. One thing he mentioned on his, I think it was his tweet page or Facebook, one or the other. He did mention that it was the first time a showing like this happened for one of his dad's albums since he was 9 years old. He said in 1984. This high.
He must be thrilled.
So
let's hope it happens here too.
Oh yes, yes.
We also have the John Lennon tribute CD, Gems Celebrates John Lennon, with artists from the Gems record label, all covering songs from John's career with the Beatles and solo. That includes the Weaklings, Richard Barone, the Midnight Callers, the Gripweeds, and Jonathan Pushkar, with liner notes from our very own Ken Womack.
There we go.
The price had to be doubled on the CD just because of Ken's contribution.
That's right.
Hey, in all seriousness, we all owe Marty so much. I've told him many times, we think of all the music we got in the 70s that we would otherwise have not had access to if it weren't for Jim.
Yep.
Staggering.
Having worked in a record store, Record World, on Long Island, we always heard about Gem Records and imports.
Was that the one
from
at
Gem.
Roosevelt Field Mall?
Yes.
Huh? Okay.
Yes, it was. Very good, Ken.
I think I saw Grease there once. Yeah.
Speaking of Sean, he performed John's song Isolation on Stephen Colbert's show for their Play at Home music series, which you can see now on YouTube. Sean plays electric guitar in the video. He is the only person that you see, but he says he also plays drums on the song, and his nephew, Jack, plays bass. When I hear nephew, I'm thinking through Yoko, I'm guessing. But Sean says, crazy how much the lyrics fit our current year. Yoko Ono is contributing to a new 77-track compilation called Good Music to Avert the Collapse of American Democracy, Volume 2. Following the success of the first volume, the money goes to the organization The Voting Rights Lab, a nonpartisan organization that brings state advocacy, policy, and legislative expertise to the fight for voting rights. Yoko Ono and the Plastic Ono Band have contributed the song There's No Goodbye Between Us. It's a remix by Deacon of Animal Collective. The song was first on her album, Take Me to the Land of Hell. Other artists contributing include David Byrne, Pearl Jam, and My Morning Jacket. A few weeks ago, we reported on a virtual John Lennon tribute concert called Dear John, some of which was recorded at the Hard Rock Cafe in London. The concert itself is now available to watch online on YouTube. Look it up under Dear John, second annual John Lennon tribute concert in aid of War Child UK. That's the charity that you can donate to. They even have Dear John apparel line. Artists who performed included Graham Goldman and John Ilsey from Dire Straits. As Paul McCartney has become so adept at teasing his fans online about upcoming releases, with all the speculation of a McCartney 3 release, if you subscribe to Spotify, and if you choose to play any song from the first McCartney album or McCartney 2, then it shows a die with the number 3 on it. Reports have it that a release is due in December. I keep hearing December 11th. That's not confirmed. We should have an announcement pretty soon, and I hope a new single. And some people that I know, some friends of ours, have already received something in the mail for that from Capitol Records. It's a pouch, and it's got dice in there, and they all have 3 on it, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yep.
3 and then the title McCartney.
Okay. So I think we can safely say it's on.
Something's coming out.
Okay.
Coming.
And
mean-
how I want one of those. pouches with
Had
the dice
many
in it.
people in the
Hey,
comments
it
are
was-
doing that, Joe.
I have this
Only-
in trade. I have one of these extra cube, a new cube. If anybody wants to make a trade, get in touch with me, Mr. Mayo, and we can do a little trade here. Okay.
Well, as someone who's used to saying, well, it ain't official yet. Now I can say it's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
And Ringo Starr sent out a tweet recently. Another cool day in the studio. Thank you, Luke, Jenny, and Joe. Peace and love. Ringo's been talking about making an EP. Would love to see a few new songs from Ringo coming out soon. The Luke he's talking about is Ken's own friend, Steve Lukather, who's just did an interview with on his new podcast show. And I'm guessing Jenny is Jenny Lewis, and Joe, I don't know if that's Joe Walsh or not. But the picture online, it wasn't Joe Walsh with Ringo.
Speaking of Luca 30, just announced Toto getting back together, or a new lineup of Toto, I should say.
Oh.
After I
Wow.
thought last year he said that the band was retiring. So
I remember that. Huh.
yeah, but a new
All right.
lineup for Toto. So
Once COVID's over.
yeah.
A couple more news items, and then we're on to our interview. Elton John has a new box set due out November 13th. It's called the Jewel Box Collection, described as an archival collection of 148 songs dating as far back
Wow.
as far back as 1965 up through 2019. Don't you kind of wish Paul would do the same thing?
Ah,
Yes.
jeez, please.
One of the tracks on there is called Regimental Sergeant Zippo, described as a nod to the 60s era and the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album. Recorded in May 1968, Elton says this was going to be the title track of his unreleased debut album from 1969, and you can actually preview the song on rocksellermagazine.com, or you can check our own Facebook page because I posted it there. Okay.
All right.
And finally, George Harrison's single "For My Sweet Lord" is being reissued for Record Store Day on November 27th. It is supposed to come in a milky clear vinyl.
Yep.
No word if the song has been remixed.
Tom's
All
on it.
right.
I'm already in line.
So is Joe.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll get that.
Yep.
So that's it for the news. Although you were telling me, Tom, actually all of you, that there's a new video that's out for
Yeah,
It's
Yes,
Johnny's birthday.
it's Johnny's birthday. Yeah, it was just like 10 minutes before we hooked up. I saw it was on my YouTube, and I saw in my notifications that there was a new George Harrison video. So I went on there, and it's a nice little animated video for It's Johnny's Birthday, the song from the third disc on All Things Must Pass. So it
Apple
was
Jam.
Apple Jam, yeah. So it was a fun little animated video. So check it out.
Yeah, only a 1-minute song.
Yes, exactly.
But what a minute.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I was just curious if that was brand new or if that had been done long ago, and I didn't know if anybody else has seen that before. So
I haven't. I have
Okay.
not.
I
Do
have.
you know where the melody came from that song?
mm-mm.
It's Johnny's birthday. It came from a hit record that Cliff Richard had in the UK called Congratulations.
Oh wow.
George borrowed it from that and
So
added new lyrics to that.
So George was sued for the wrong song then.
He borrowed it.
He borrowed. Thank you, Kit.
Okay. All right. Maybe he got Cliff's permission. You never know.
Anyway, so that's it for Beatle News. And we move on to our interview with Ken Womack, who, as we said, has his new book out, showing it once again, John Lennon 1980, The Last Days in the Life. I'd just like to start by saying that I think that this is definitely a wonderful book. And what I like most about it is that it really covers very well the last 5 years of John Lennon's life. And I was a bit concerned when I heard about this book, mainly because of the fact that so many books that have come out after John's death about that period, you could describe as being salacious. But this is definitely not that. It's a very positive book about the relationship that John and Yoko had together and all of John's activities. And if you're wondering what he did the last 5 years of his life, it's there in Ken's book. And, I just think kudos to you, Ken. You did an excellent job with this.
Thank you.
And, basically, in a nutshell, when you read everything that's in this book, you will know that John spent a lot of time taking care of Sean, watching television, reading books, writing music, doing quite a bit of that, and going on a lot of vacations until 1980, when he got the bug to really want to go back into the recording studio. But that's what I love, how detailed the book is, and the fact that you centered more on the positive aspects of John and Yoko's relationship and the music.
I'll
Agreed.
second that.
Well, thank you. I didn't think we needed another true crime book. We needed a meaningful story about the way this person that we all admire so much launched this really powerful comeback. And sadly doesn't even get to see really the fruits of it and how much joy it brought people.
Right. Before I pass you over to Tom, I think one of the other great things about this book is that there are some of us who were fortunate to listen to the Lost Lennon Tapes radio series when it was on the radio, and even collected the music from that series on bootleg. I think, and I've said this many times, I think it's Yoko's greatest gift that she ever gave John Lennon fans. Although that Imagine box set's pretty close. But for those of us that know what John was doing musically, you put it all in perspective here and connect the dots as far as songs that he worked on early on that later surfaced on Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey. So for people that don't really know all about that, that's a definite advantage.
That is such a good point, Ken. And she really did give us an incredible gift, of something that literally was worth millions of dollars. And she shared it with the world via that series. There's actually an excellent compendium which catalogs it, which is quite effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, without that, there's so many incredible foundational sources out there when it comes to John Lennon, and that's one of the most important ones.
You talking about Eight Arms to Hold You?
Eight Arms to Hold You is certainly wonderful. Ken Sharp's book on the Double Fantasy sort of oral history.
Right.
Lennonology, Chip Mattinger's work is fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, just all of the wonderful interviews that fortunately were conducted and recorded with John and Yoko during that last year. I mean, think about the wealth of material we have in that moment, compared to maybe the lack of a wealth of material we have to understand even 1969 still. And it's fortunate that we have all of those sources to be able to draw from and bring this story together. But not the one that's salacious, the one where we see a person doing what they love and doing what they do best.
Well said. Okay. Tom?
Well, another great gift that Yoko gave us was actually a gift that she gave to John, was that Yamaha CP80 electric, piano, which probably, gave us all of this music that we can talk about today. But Ken, really beautiful job on the book. The first two chapters, I really love how you write about the Dakota, and describing it as maybe a second place where John can go when he felt low or when he felt blue or whatever like that. And, talk about the Dakota. I mean, was it while you were writing it, did you have like a sense that this was probably another security blanket for John while he lived in such a, crazy city at the time?
Probably so. I mean, it was a place that more than one person has noted looks like Strawberry Field, the old orphanage. It certainly was a place where they chose to live. They moved expressly from, the village uptown. And by the way, speaking of all the wealth of scholarship that's out there, Scott Cardinal's wonderful book on the Dakota. I mean, those are labors of love, works like that. And in fact, I would have liked to have seen Scott on 2020 last week, because the story of that building, it's like a character in this story. Right. It really is. It's ultimately, an inanimate object, but it's really a character. It's been used as a character, right? Right. Rosemary's Baby and that sort of thing. So it's just essential understanding how that place functions in John and Yoko's lives. Of course, the feeling of security that it provides, but can't quite provide, of course, in a world gone mad. But it really is. It has so much to do with living in New York, right? And one of my most important goals with this book was and I spent a lot of time up in the Upper West Side, talking to folks, getting a sense of what life is like now, which is very, very different. And I don't mean COVID now, but what life is like now is very different from 1980, when the city was, as Ken Michaels can tell you, a far more dangerous place. You didn't necessarily walk across the street and spend time in the park after dark. You mostly lived in your neighborhood. John's would have gone to Amsterdam Avenue or so. And that's where you went to your doctor and your pharmacist and, those sorts of things. That's where you had your bodega and, your coffee nook or what have you. So life was very different then. And I wanted us to be able to try to capture that in these moments while we still can, because of course, if you walk down that street now, you walk down 72nd toward the river, you're gonna walk out on the avenue and you're gonna see a lot of CVS's everywhere and Gregory's Coffee and all of this other business, 2 Chipotles within sight. It's just a different world, and to try to capture the flavor of that while we still can, I think is important too.
Right. Ken, even the Dakota building itself, I've always noticed, I remember it back then, was a lot more dramatic looking. It seemed like there was years of soot on it or something, very dark.
Well,
whereas now it's always much cleaner. For a while, it's been that way. And when you see it recreated in certain documentaries dealing with John and other things about the Dakota, it looks so much more cleansed than it was then.
And it was. And it wasn't, the city was literally dirtier back then. And I had a wonderful walk around the area with our friend Susan Radisher Ryan, that we all know so well, and hopefully is doing well tonight. And, she turned me on to sources that helped me understand all of the ordinances that began to come into play really right in the months after John died. And one of those ordinances was about the upkeep of the city's buildings. And so you can go back and look at those photos. It's amazing how grimy the place is. And of course, many of these ordinances kicked in not long after that, and suddenly the building's looking so much better. But there were a number of ordinances like that that took place. Even the park, there was a huge conservation ordinance, and the creation of the Central Park Conservatory
Right.
occurred not long, maybe even right between his death and the new year in 1981. That happened.
Weren't you talking like somebody was witnessing people taking whether like a picnic table or taking it apart and using it as firewood or something like that in the book?
That's right. Yeah,
It's
I
very
mean,
funny.
yeah, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. There were, many stories like that. You just have to, I kept
Right.
that one because it was the most interesting one, and it certainly gave a
Mhm.
stark impression of what life was like,
Right.
before, the different levels of gentrification, Giuliani, et cetera, et cetera. That
Yeah.
city's probably made itself and remade itself, what, 4 times since then?
Yeah. One thing I was reading that I didn't know, I didn't really know that Yoko was really into like the supernatural, getting a medium to check out the place before they moved in, having, astrologer tell her about Fred Seaman before he became like the assistant, just to see if he could, do the job or whatnot. I found that interesting. Another thing that you write about, all the creative spurts here and there that John had during that 5-year span, whether it was the Ballad of John and Yoko musical or just, songs like, Free as a Bird or Real Love. What do you think, while you're writing this book, what do you think kind of like, if you were getting into his mind, what do you think like held him up or stopped him from following through with those projects?
That's a wonderful question. And I don't draw any conclusions because we don't know, right, what was in his,
Yeah.
and I don't think we could say with any real confidence. What we do see him doing is he goes through all of those different kinds of genres and ends up coming back to the one we all know and love, right? Which is pop music, rock music, vocal music, whatever you want to call it. I think he's trying to find his voice during a strange time. The guy's exhausted.
Right.
We've detailed why on this show before, right? I mean, he spent all of those years in the Beatles. George Harrison more than once talks about how you lose your nervous system.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got that aspect. You have the issue of, in addition to that, you've got the fact that he's had this more than one lawsuit, certainly, but the immigration fight, most notably, that goes
Right.
on and on. And prevents him from being able to go back to England, for example, or travel abroad. Not to mention, there's this threat that's hanging over his head, and he's being called out by the president. He's on the president's enemies list, right? And apparently, that was a dubious honor for many, but there it was. So I think he's just flat out exhausted and probably feels like he should be doing something, but maybe understands at some level that he's earned the right to take some time off.
Right.
And of course, they have an infant at the end of the year, toward the end of the year. And of course, that's another level of exhaustion altogether, as parents out there know.
Right.
And a very severe one at that. So I just think the guy at many levels is just tired. And of course, then he's watching this world sort of spin by him and become ever more competitive. I mean, the 1970s is such an incredibly fecund period for the musical arts, right? It just doesn't stop. And, by the time you get to 1980, there are a lot of people vying for the top slot or any of the slots.
Yeah. You were on another show that we won't name at the moment, but I'm sure Ken will talk about it later. Anyways, you talked about how proud you were about discovering the baseball film, the made-for-TV film, and I was wondering if you can just elaborate that on that a little bit more. Talk about the research into find or discovering, the movie.
Well, as we all know, there aren't that many more discoveries out there in Beatledom.
Right.
Other than trying to tell the stories right, to gather the sources, be good scholars and all of that. But I was really surprised no one had run down that movie, quite frankly. I figured Mark Lewison would have gotten it because, and he's always the first person I go to when I have any idea, do you have this, and he usually does, let's face it. He's just extraordinary in all the best ways. But I was surprised that no one had run it down. And I was even thinking to myself, well, it's possible that And through no fault of her own, Yoko might have misremembered this. After suffering just the indescribable horror of what she experienced and then her widowhood, she would be forgiven, right?
Right, yeah.
If she was trying to gather her memories and remember that. And so I simply just wanted to know what it was. And so began canvassing every baseball film under the world, in the world, which there are many, many baseball films, by the way.
Right.
And there was even a heyday for decades where, 10 or 20 of the things would come out every year. And I love baseball. So, and sadly, my team did not proceed to the World Series in all their Houston Astros unglory.
Go Rays. Mother in
But in
Florida
any
was
event,
the Rays.
I really want to know what the film was. And, one thing we know about John Lennon that's been well documented is he loves television.
Right.
And he was a subscriber of TV Guide wherever he was. And I assumed correctly that he had continued that practice in Bermuda. And once I discovered, after going through all of these, baseball movies, trying to find this quote and unsuccessfully looking for the moment when he's inspired, by Robert Browning, I went to TV Guide, found out that Bermuda had American television syndicated during that period, despite being a British protectorate, and was able to collate it and find out that it was this TV movie, which of course is like a dead end because, so many TV movies have not been digitized.
Right.
And I don't believe this one was either. I had to hire someone to digitize an old videotape, and there it was. And out of the mouth of a character, Edward Herman playing Lou Gehrig, and Blythe Danner is the receiver of the lovely piece. And of course, that gave it John all he needed, those first couple of lines, and he was off to the races.
Cool. Very cool.
So I probably gave far too much of an expansive answer there, but
no, I love it. That's great.
But it's exciting stuff. And it's so in keeping with his compositional practices, right? Here's a guy who loved to find things out in the world and bring them into his story. And the truth is, many of these things that he brings into his story are very profound, but we wouldn't know about them if John Lennon didn't weave them into his songs.
Yeah. No, I'm sure this is a moment where, you as a writer, or researcher, this is like your Lewison type moment where you discover something,
I won Lewison.
Yes. Well, it's something to be proud of for sure.
Good one.
Yeah. Ken?
Yeah, I was going to say that what we didn't say was prior to this happening that Yoko had just written Let Me Count the Ways. And that didn't she sing it over the phone, Tim?
Yeah, that's in her memory. She sings it over the phone to him, and then says, "Well, John, you write something in return." And this was I'm not saying it was in this particular instance, but when you go back and you study the long reach of all of the words he left behind in interviews and other places, he did not like to write, to use his own phrase from another point, like a performing flea. So in other words, he didn't enjoy going to write A Hard Day's Night for Dick Lester, who said, write me a song. He liked those things that came like a bolt out of the blue. And I think he got to enjoy that world by initially not having anything to give back to Yoko, but then turning on his good friend, the television, and there it was. And not only that, it was a Browning, and they had this thing about the Brownings, right? They loved the Brownings. They imagined themselves as some kind of rock and roll reincarnation of the Victorian poets. And they also were well aware that, like Yoko, Elizabeth Barrett was older than Robert. And so they connected with them on a certain level that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Kit?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned just a minute ago, Ken, about the music scene at the time and how competitive it was. And when you talk about that a bit in the book about, John trying to kind of navigate his way through the music scene. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that, because like you mentioned, you know, he would listen to certain kinds of you know, reggae and so forth, but that he wasn't particularly fond of the punk scene, and you know, so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you know, what he thought of the music of that late 70s, 1980 period.
Well, and that's a tough thing to comment on, right? Because we have to, for the most part, we get a lot of that information secondhand. We know he had a jukebox that he kept records in, but guess what? We know for the most part the kind of records he kept in there because he was a connoisseur and a walking encyclopedia of knowledge about 50s rock and roll. And he would tell anybody this. He could not necessarily remember what happened during a certain Beatles recording or what album perhaps it was on, but he knew his 50s rock and roll. But you know, he liked disco. We know this. He liked reminiscing. He liked Just the Way You Are. He liked Billy Joel. Not surprisingly, he wasn't the only one in the United States, right? He did have a great affinity for reggae that had been developing over a period of years. But that kind of gets me to something that that just fascinates me when you really take that deep dive. You know, he was watching the shows we were watching. You know, he was, you know, it was the sad part for me of the story is not necessarily knowing how it was in, because I knew I wasn't going to, you know, take you into the archway or anything. What was sad for me was just the nostalgia for realizing that he was watching and listening to much of the same things we were, because the world was a smaller place, right? And people had more shared experiences, you know, the end of MASH or what have you, you know, those sorts of things. Or one of his favorite news stories that we were all following, you know, the hostage crisis. I hate like hell that he didn't get to find out how that ended. You know, that I mean, I know that's kind of a minor, silly thing for him to been robbed of when he was robbed of so much more. His family, you know, watching Sean grow up, all those things. But I just remember what a part of our lives it was, you know, people tying yellow ribbons around their trees and neighborhoods across the country. And it just excited me to discover all of those kind of shared experiences. Saturday Night Live, right? You know, just all of that. I know this is going far afield from your excellent question, but we typically, we understand a lot of the music that we listen to because we fortunately, depending on whom you ask, you know, Fred Seaman was in the car and would keep track of such things. Because otherwise we don't have a lot of great sources, you know, who are out there keeping track of things. I think the best material that Fred left behind, that Hunter Davies collected, were all of those lists. I wish we had more of those amazing lists of John, what he was interested in, the nonfiction he wanted to read, you know, the products he was buying, because we were buying them too.
He's interested in Sugar Blues.
Yeah. I'm endlessly fascinated by that, you know. Just that kind of centrality of culture that existed.
Yeah. Well, and actually that kind of leads to my next question about what he was listening to, because one of the other things I was fascinated with in the book was how you talk quite a bit about one song that he worked on, and I certainly knew about it, but his parody of Bob Dylan's "Gotta Serve Somebody," "Serve Yourself," and you know, and I had heard you know, Dutch imports of that before.
The
And what?
The obscene version?
Yes, I've heard. Yeah, you know, there are different versions, and but I was really interested in, you know, you really you know, went into detail and, you know, really showed how we went back to it and back to it and back to it, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you know, why do you think, you know, he worked so long on it, and what do you think that said, you know, what does that say about, you know, his journey, you know, going back to being, you know, to kind of getting his mojo back, if to put it in a non-technical way.
Well done on the non-technical part. And you know, I know that I'm not everyone agrees with me on this, but to my mind, that episode is very much it's like How Do You Sleep, right? Where he comes back to that song many times, especially in those late interviews, and he says it wasn't about Paul, it was about me. And obviously the lyrics were about Paul. They're very pointedly about Paul McCartney, but the idea that the person he's disappointed in is not Paul, it's himself. And you can see this emerging in that very interesting audio diary from the fall of 1979, where he's castigating himself over a number of issues, over a wide number of issues. And he's at some level, he's disappointed himself, perhaps that he's not in the game, or that he wants to be in the game. And there's Dylan with a hit, Bob Dylan with a hit, right? That doesn't always happen. As we know, over the course of his career, all of his accolades aside, and there's Bob with a hit, and it's, of course, they've had this kind of, from John's perspective, odd relationship almost from the beginning, parody of Norwegian Wood, John's just dis-ease with him that you see for many years. This approach he has to Dylan. And here Dylan comes out with this song that's, quasi-religious, and even gospel-esque. And it gets under his skin. And I wonder if at a certain point, Serve Yourself was like How Do You Sleep, in the sense that it seemed like it was excoriating Bob Dylan, but he was really commenting back on himself, for reasons that we probably can't entirely understand.
It's just interesting. I just found it fascinating, as I always thought of it as always he's just having some fun, but you really shed some new light on that song in the book, because I just thought, wow, I never really thought of it being as kind of part of his journey of this journey of finding himself creatively, of getting back to, getting his spark back, as you talk about. So I thought it was fascinating that, that you went into detail about him, how he just went back to it and back to it and back to it. And, it was just, I just thought that was a particularly interesting part of the book, of the many interesting parts of the book, but that one really fascinated me.
At a certain level, you have to wonder if he was using it as this way to get an energy bump, right? To step back into the fray by really going after Dylan, or after these issues that he saw and felt were discrepancies in himself, or what have you. But it is fascinating, that song, and it's not on Double Fantasy. Right?
It didn't make the final cut.
I was always wondering if John was jealous in a way, resentful that he wasn't doing it, or with the Bob Dylan in the diaries when he says now he's a waiter for Christ, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right, and yeah,
it's talking about Paul Simon. So some people believe, well, that's when you're jealous or you're bitter or something like that. Did he genuinely, I wonder, dislike the songs, or is he just envious? Because later on, of course, we know when he heard Coming Up by Paul McCartney, that's always a wonderful story. That's always one of my favorites.
Right, but of course he's in a different frame of mind by then, right?
Sure,
he's decided he's going to learn how to sail. He's he's got a couple of these songs in a pretty good place at that point, right? So I think his mindset's different at that point. He's disappointed in himself for a number of reasons. Some are personal, right? In the fall of 1979. So I think it's all of those emotions that you just described, Joe. Every one of them. He was probably envious. He probably disappointed himself. He said that he would hear things on the radio, and rarely would anything excite him, where he would think they really nailed it. Apparently one of those, fortunately, was Coming Up, right? In other cases, though, he would change the station because all he could think about is what they did wrong or how the song could be made better. I think we could safely say that, one of the biggest, perhaps negative ramifications of the many gifts that John Lennon had was his ability to be such a surgical thinker. and to get to the heart of his issues with himself or with music or what have you, because that was a hell of a burden for him to carry around. You know, at a certain level, I wonder if it sapped some of the enjoyment he might have had out of some experiences, you know.
At the
It's always
same
been amazing to
time,
me to think how
Yeah.
John didn't have that much confidence in the stuff, especially the stuff that he was thinking of doing on Double Fantasy. And even Jack Douglas was like, "No, this is great. This is going to be the single, like starting over, for
Yeah.
example, and all that kind of stuff," which I was reading about. And I thought that he did such a great job of that too. I just wanted to throw that in because I'm pretty familiar with this stuff, but to learn the way you put it all in sequence when we're talking about actually recording Double Fantasy, and we get the order in which they worked broken down. You break it down nicely. You could find this maybe in other places, but you break it all down great. What was the first thing? Interesting that so much of the stuff wasn't on the finished album. It came out later, some of it on Milk and Honey.
Right,
they
right.
worked on first. That's always interesting. And the whole Cheap Trick gig that they did on Losing You and what happened with that, I found very interesting too. So it's funny, but going back to what I was saying, John's lack of confidence, it's really striking. I mean, we always knew that he would tell you when he was insecure, when he didn't have confidence. He didn't try to hide that, but we think he's such a great writer, such a great musician, such an artist. Yet he really didn't have that much faith in his material at times.
I think that's what's so amazing, though, is how he would be vulnerable in that way. I used the phrase earlier. I was reading this wonderful bit this morning where he was talking about why he does what he does, and he said, "There's a reason why I'm a performing flea. I need this." He needed to put himself out there, even though it petrified him at times and it made him feel paranoid and insecure. And imagine, again, going back to what we were talking about, coming back in 1980 and trying to do it in that field. Wow. That's really something. And if that doesn't make you feel insecure when you launch yourself into that world, I don't know what would, unless you simply didn't have those impulses. And I just love the story that Yoko shares with us. And she's, to her credit, perhaps she hasn't given us too much. But the things she does I find so very poignant. And one of those is that great story, a week or so before he's murdered. And she knows how important the success of that album is to him. And she brings it to him. She's worried that he's going to be upset. And he says, "That's okay. We still got the family." That just kills me. Because think about it. John Lennon, 5-6 years earlier, would he have done that? He would have perhaps gone into a depression or locked himself away for a few weeks to really suffer for that. But instead, he just knows what's important. And in my mind, and I may be putting words in his mouth here, to me, I think he did enjoy that experience so much of what they were doing with the interviews, with just his engagement with the music. And of course, the incredible engagement with Walking on Thin Ice. I like to think that he realized that it was the experience that mattered more than whether or not it's going to be number one. But of course, at that point in the book, you just want to go to John and say, "Don't worry, it's going to be number one."
Got a question from the audience from Matthew Smith, faithful listener of ours. Matt, absolutely. He asked, "Did you get to talk to the Cheap Trick guys?"
I did not get to talk to the Cheap Trick guys, and it's not for lack of trying. I have been trying to get. I guess I need to. Well, I'm just not a stalker. But it's not for lack of trying. I've wanted.
Get with it, Ken.
I was actually lined up to be able to talk to Rick Nielsen, and it fell through. And then there was another opportunity, and it got COVIDed, which I believe is a verb.
Yep, it is now.
But yeah, no, I absolutely did not. And I wanted to before, because of course, one of my favorite Cheap Trick albums was produced by George Martin.
Yep.
I love All Shook Up. It's a great record. And it sounds like they had a great experience too.
Maybe they didn't like the way things turned out. in the end, with what they did with John and Yoko, maybe they weren't happy.
I don't know. I just I haven't been able to pull that one off, unfortunately. And in this case, there were two of them you want to talk to, Bunny Carlos and Rick Nielsen.
Yeah, that's for sure. And
Is
by the way,
it
if
true?
anybody has any questions out there, please, I'm keeping an eye on Facebook here, so please feel free to post them. We'll get to them if we can. So
My favorite interview, well, it was John Smith, the engineer, who worked on so much of this music. He was very young when he worked on this project, and you can kind of hear that in his voice. He brings those memories from being in your 20s or whatever, when you're working with John Lennon. And I love talking to Dave Sholin, who I was pleased to see got some footage last week with ABC. He is what a person, right? As Ken could tell you, he's been in radio a long time.
Mhm.
And
can you tell us how long it took from start to finish, from the moment you started the project to its official release date?
About 4 years.
Oh, wow.
wow.
I mean, trying to get a timeline going, like I've said at the outset, there are a lot of wonderful sources you can go to, at trying to understand that timeline and working with those, with the output from the Lost Lennon tapes, was an undertaking.
Wow.
So you work on several books at the same time?
Yes.
Wow.
Doesn't that get kind of tricky?
It would, except I have a system of folders on my computer where I put stuff, and so there's so many different rhythms when you're working on a long scholarly project, and when you find things that like all that wonderful stuff with Manny's music, I throw that in the file, and I try to keep it organized so that when the writing time comes, it's in a reasonable sort of order. I
Right.
build timelines. I make lots of notes, those sorts of things, just to keep it in order. At a certain point, though, you can't organize it till you start writing it, if that makes any sense. And I'll tell you why, because you think you have the timeline right, and then lo and behold, you're writing away and you're at, I don't know, let's make up a month, February 1979 or something, and you realize you had one item out of place and you have to go back because the ramifications play down the line. You've been talking about the writing of this one song and its demos, and you made a mistake, or you've discovered something about the timeline, and it just it blows up in your face, and you sort of have to go back and unstitch, until you find out where you sewed the wrong thing in.
Wow.
When you
But I
were
kinda like
talking,
that.
you were talking about John's insecurities and listening to the radio and being critical of certain music. He also admitted that he would hear songs, and if these songs were ones that he really liked, he didn't want to listen to the whole song because he'd be jealous that it wasn't him.
But also, he would want to go out and write one, just make him want to write one if he liked it enough.
Yeah, it must be an amazing thing, right? To be in that rarefied air where you can do that too.
Right.
I never have a problem listening to the radio because I know, I don't even imagine competing in that arena. And yet he's a guy who has seen the highest heights, and so when he hears the songs, his recommendations mean a lot. I love the postcard he sends to Ringo where he says, "You should do a song like that Blondie's Heart of Glass." Think about that.
Well, we know from the Playboy interview that he liked Blondie and he liked the Talking Heads, Bruce Springsteen's Hungry Heart. There was a lot of new music at the time that he was into. And of course, when he was in the Bahamas and he heard the B-52s, Rock Lobster, that gave him the sign there that maybe the world is ready for Yoko. So,
I've been struck by how much you can hear the Talking Heads and like Every Man Has a Woman Who Loves Him and all of those great tunes. There's a lot of, she's got her finger on the pulse of something back then.
And I especially love, when you're talking about Double Fantasy, how supportive each of the two of them were for each other. you really bring that out a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
didn't you say that originally Yoko wanted side 2 to be hers, so it wouldn't interfere with John's songs?
Right. There was a whole debate about this, and it's fairly well documented. But you know what I love about that is it's kind of the um, I don't know, the antidote to all of the salacious books written about them, right?
Hmm.
Who's doing whom and what and whatever, you know. And what's interesting is that's 12 years into their marriage, and whatever's happening or happened with them, and we know that, you know, we know about the Lost Weekend. This is all well versed for us, and their challenges with substance abuse and you name it. But 12 years into their marriage, they had figured out how to be supportive of each other. And I find that heartwarming, you know, and if that's what their marriage was at that point, good for them. You know, I mean, the scenes with David Geffen, and again, these have been well documented, but they're wonderful, you know, where he's taking David Geffen aside and he's like, this is important for Yoko. We need to help Yoko. And then she's pulling him aside. I really want this to work for John, you know. I mean, you know, whatever else happened, and who cares at a certain point, whatever else happened, that's what they're doing, you know.
Yeah.
And that kind of energy that John had for walking on thin ice, and even that last evening, right, when he says, this is the direction, like he's found it.
Hmm.
In his last hours, of course, he doesn't know that, but that he's found the direction. You know, as far as we're concerned, he's found the direction over and over again.
Hmm. But it's kind of interesting, when Double Fantasy first came out, a lot of the reviews found Yoko stuff more favorable because it was more modern, keeping with the times. It was edgy, whereas John was like a throwback to his old style. But we don't know, with all that John was into, maybe
Right.
his own stuff might have sounded more like Walking on Thin Ice.
It might
If he
have
continued
after
to
that,
live.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, and we'll never know, but imagine what he would have done after they had that, you know, that incredible week, and how he brought that track off, and his excitement over, you know, the wonderful work Yoko had done, and this thing they'd created together with Jack at the record plant. You've got to wonder where this was going to go, right?
Hmm.
He might have become, I think he would have become very avant-garde very quickly.
Just a couple of viewer questions here. One from a good friend of all of ours, John Bazzini of the
Hey, John.
great,
John?
the great Facebook group, Beatles and Solo and in print. He asks, any revelations about the track Jack Douglas claims he was going to be given co-writing credit on with John, called Street of Dreams?
Yeah, I like many, I've asked Jack about that, and he has the basic nuance of the story down. You know, where they were walking, and a sense of what kind of song it would be. But, you know, at this point, that's all I think we've got. That's all that he remembers. But I love it because it just shows you how profound John's imagination was at that point, um, and how effective he was at just conjuring music and language out of thin air. He really had his gifts back. You can almost feel it. And you have to wonder what songs perhaps weren't even recorded as demos. And again, Yoko's been incredibly generous, as you said, Ken, by opening up the vault and sharing the Lost Lennon tapes with us. But you know, what only existed in manuscript form that hadn't quite yet made it onto tape, because he really had some beautiful stuff he was working on there.
And another viewer, faithful viewer of ours, Jeremy Porterala, who asked
Jeremy.
him, hey,
Jeremy.
yeah, asks, did you get to speak with Hugh McCracken before he died? The story of what John told him about his past and working with Paul on Ram is a great story too.
Yeah, I love that. Like he'd auditioned for John by doing Ram. Yeah, that's beautiful stuff. I did not get to speak to Hugh. And by the way, John Bazzini does such a great service out there with his Facebook pages.
Yes,
I learn things all the time. And you know, the same can be said about the folks who run the Mike Hall, right? And others who run the Dakota pages, and you know, there's a Lost Weekend page, those 1965, 1980 pages, and what a great community they've all built. You know, I learn so much from them every day.
Yep.
Wow.
Here.
Right.
And you even say in your book about Hugh McCracken, he was the only player specifically chosen for Double Fantasy.
Yeah, so apparently that audition really paid off. Really auditioned well. That's right. Although, talking to, I guess there is a sense, right, that while John didn't pick him, that Slick was chosen very carefully by Jack as kind of, in Slick's own words, or I guess Jack's, he's the wild card. And he really did function that way.
I love the story you tell about Charlie Roth, the kid that comes in and helps him out with the electric piano, and it kind of seems like when you're writing about him, like he's telling John about how he records his songs, where he does the the drums and it almost seems like it's inspiring him to get back into the game with just his stories about how he records songs.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. Charlie recorded those ideas, included his story, including the interesting bit where John comes back on his own to get the hummingbird.
Hummingbird, right?
Because how would we have known that? The echoes of those stories are interesting too, like the fact that wasn't Charlie and his band recording down the hall.
Right.
It's just interesting. Again, I'll take it back to where it was. It was such an interesting, smaller world. Back there through the mists of time.
Pre-internet.
Yeah.
In some way, we have so much more now, arguably, but yet sometimes less was more. The same reasons you're saying, Ken. I think oftentimes what you're saying is how I describe it. I say, even on TV, we had just fewer channels and we had so much more. Everybody was tuned in together, kind of. Everybody was seeing Jaws together. Everybody had the
There's more unity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was more, the water cooler discussion really meant something the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were really talking about some kind of shared experience. And we just don't have that in the same way, certainly. I mean, there are plenty of things. We're certainly having some shared experiences right now in the world. There's no doubt. We may not all see them the same way, but we really are. So it's interesting. But I did enjoy that, thinking, when John would make some remark in some place or another about a TV show, and I'd think, I was watching that too. There's one show.
Did anybody ever see the skit that he talked about? One of these interviews, he talked about a skit on Saturday Night Live where they were doing John and Yoko, and John was running around saying, "Oh, the oven's burning," or something like that.
Well, it's on. You can see it on Saturday Night Live. It's all out there.
Right.
That one, I don't remember seeing.
Yeah, I don't recall it either. Maybe I was. My parents didn't let me stay up that night. Who knows? You'd have to go back to that moment. But yeah, you can find that. I went. If there were any video, I always tried to go back and watch it.
Yeah, they were playing off the whole house husband thing and
right.
taking care of Sean, and very timely,
Yeah, and there was that weird reaction to him, right? The week before that, before the album came out, they did some weird thing where wasn't one of the not ready for primetime players, but one of the next level folks were out there like walking around the Dakota asking questions, and of course, none of it looks very funny now at all.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
No, and yes, Joe, the building was quite sooty.
Was this during the original 5 years or the rebuild in 80?
This would have been, I think it was the rebuild.
Okay,
so then it's really not fun.
Charles Rocket.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I
not ready for prime time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A lot of them weren't ready.
At least later plays David Addison's brother on Moonlighting.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, sir. Yep. I remember that. We have just another one more comment here from Michael Slum, who says, who says that sailing to Bermuda story was so intense. I'm actually from Newport, Rhode Island, so it was interesting you got so much inside info on that.
Well, it's it's all out there, and it's a great story, and
sure is.
It really is a great story. And Michael Sloan, by the way, is a really talented singer in his own right, who lives out in Princeton out here. Proud to know him. But yeah, it's a great story, isn't it? About about John talking about how just empowered he felt, and it was this special moment in his life. And again, it takes me back, like I said, with that last night, John Lennon discovering the greatest moments in his life, and we could have named hundreds of them for him. But maybe it's the excitement over doing something seemingly for himself.
Great.
Yeah.
Like,
I've got a question about the double fantasy sessions. I found this really interesting because it was always my impression, at least prior to double fantasy, that for John's solo albums, when it came to his own songs, he knew how they wanted to sound roughly, and he would tell the musicians what to play. And if the musicians came up with something better, he would, in most cases, accept it if he liked it. But with double fantasy, the songs were charted. And
Right,
you
so-
have the name of Tony DeVillio,
Tony
did the
DeVillio,
charts.
right?
Yeah.
I think Tony was the secret weapon, and kudos to Jack Douglas for making that project move forward by having an arranger. Now, when you go back and listen to the outtakes, there are plenty of moments where John's like, "Drummer, don't do that,"
Hmm.
or in fact, he kind of picked on poor Andy Newmark a little bit. He's like, "If you'd start listening, it's fun stuff to listen to, or Slick wouldn't be there, or what have you." So it's interesting stuff to listen to, because he still does some of that same old kind of behavior, Ken. But I think it was a brainchild of Jack to have an arranger on the scene so that he could expedite the process. Because one thing he knew about John that we all know too is he did not like to dilly-dally in the studio. He liked to get in and get it done, and that allowed them to sort of supercharge the sessions. But I don't think it stopped him from giving his opinion to the musicians.
Yeah.
I like when I remember listening to one of the sessions, and I think probably to Slick, John saying, I think they were doing "I'm Losing You," when he says, "You could fill all those holes in you want," like with the guitar playing. He says, kind of like encouraging him to play. It's not like really necessarily mapped out. If you can fill these holes, if you can put the guitar in there how you like, that's fine with him too.
Yeah, and the charts weren't done so thickly that they would mitigate that ability, Joe, right? You could still do all of that wonderful ad lib kind of work. But it would give them space, because the musicians already knew the songs, that then they could come up with all of those wonderful bits, in the studio, including that beautiful descending piece that I guess it's McCracken and Slick play on Starting Over. You can hear them working it out one day. It's really quite lovely on one of the outtakes, because they're just playing along with the mechanics of the song as it's already been imagined.
Right. One thing that I found interesting, I knew all about David Geffen, and that Geffen was smart enough to know that if you want to deal with John and Yoko, you got to go through Yoko. And but what I didn't realize was that what sealed the deal was that Geffen was willing to take their album without even hearing it. And that impressed Yoko a lot.
I would have.
That's because you're a deal maker, Joe. You have impressed the Lennon family. It's been documented. It is.
yes, that's right.
Oh, I never thought of that.
See what you did there.
It's a public issue. It's a public testimony is available for all to see. And when she explained, how her material would be on the album, he knew, he was really in tune with what they were trying to do. He obviously did his homework, and when she said, that her work would be there too, he said, "I wouldn't have it any other way."
Very smart.
He put a lot out there, though, right? To start that new company. He'd had that cancer scare in the late 70s. And talk about a guy who's given back so much, right? He's become a great philanthropist.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he really built up that
I'm
company
sorry, I
then.
don't want to interrupt anybody, but I have a question here. I've been wondering about the question of John and Yoko going a full tour. I've always thought, from what I'd heard, that it was just a matter of that John was thinking he'd like to do that. In fact, I think it was the RKO interview, the last day that he was alive, and he said, if people will accept us as John and Yoko as a couple, we can have fun and enjoy the music, then I'd be happy to go out there. But a lot of people and say it was more official. They were going to do it. It was planned and stuff like that. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I look to Ken Sharp, who had done some work in getting those. I don't think we would know some of that testimony if he hadn't started asking questions, because some of those folks aren't with us anymore. We know that John was starting to imagine a stage show, what he would play. He was actually imagining a kind of full court press in a way, right, too, because he was also talking about what was it? The videos he would make. He wanted to make a video like Ashes to Ashes. Hey, we all did that year.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful video. So I think we have pretty good testimony that he was strongly leaning toward it. Would it have taken longer? Who can say? Undertaking a world tour is a big deal. Certainly. So this is one of those things we'll never know all the details, but from all the testimony, again, from those various folks, it sure sounded like a lot of thought and resistance had already been overcome.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Weren't they already talking about who was going to be in the band?
Oh, sure. Well, the band wanted to be in the band, right? And my favorite part, and again, kudos to Ken for getting this, was that bit where, they're letting him know that concerts aren't 25 minutes anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. That was
they're not they're not
Right.
Beatles sets, right?
John was like, "What?"
What,
2 hours? What?
Could you imagine John in the MTV era, the kind of videos he might be thinking of
Yeah.
making?
I think it would have been wonderful.
Yeah, you
Turning
said he
into a monster.
was
or something, he
intrigued.
said.
Yeah, he was
Absolutely
intrigued by the Ashes to Ashes video, and yeah, I think he would have been great.
Right. I mean, he had a very visual mind. Imagine him going back. Imagine, it's always there. It's behind you.
Yeah,
Kid.
right. Behind him.
Imagine him being able to take these ideas and give pictures to all of those words.
Yeah, he would have really embraced MTV.
Yep.
And
I think
MTV
so.
would have been the better for it.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely.
One amusing thing I just wanted to bring up, since I was just talking about Geffen, I didn't realize this till you had it in your book, Ken, but you say that Stiff Records
Yeah.
offered a record deal to John and Yoko for $5,000, which is kind of like the Lorne Michaels deal for the Beatles to play for $3,000, but
$5,000.
Give Ringo whatever you think he deserves.
Should have gave Ringo that deal. He
Yeah.
probably would have taken it.
At that point, probably. Yeah.
That's such a
That's
kind of
right.
70s thing too, isn't it? That little story. I mean, it happens in 1980, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, really. Oh, jeez. I forgot that. Oh, man.
Excellent.
Oh,
so any last questions, guys? Or maybe from our audience?
let's see. Just seeing if there are any other questions. Well, a lot of people are also mentioning and have links to the Saturday Night Live bits that we were
Yeah, our
talking
friend
about.
Mike Narr has
Yeah.
provided a link
Yep.
directly to that episode, so that you'll want to check that out afterwards.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you very much.
Yes.
I don't know how
Well,
I've never seen
The
that.
crack
I don't know.
researchers are right here inside this.
Yeah.
Yep. So, we've always got alert listeners here. This is absolutely so. Somebody did ask if it is possible to get autographed copies.
Well, all they have to do, if they want to message me on Facebook or email me or what have you, if they want to have Amazon send a book here, I will sign it and put it in the mail for them.
Excellent. All right. So, yep, just look up Ken on Facebook or email them. Can they go to your website and contact you that way, or?
They sure can, and I'm I'm touched and honored to help out that way. So,
Excellent.
especially in these days when, as you and I know, Kitten, We're not seeing our friends at the fest like we used to.
That's for
Our
sure.
side by side tables.
That's right,
You
where we
know,
get
it's
up to all
amazing we've
kinds of
still been
trouble.
able to keep up with each other.
That's right. That's for
It's my
sure.
fault. I've been waiting for a chance to be on a panel physically at the fest, and COVID.
Well,
And
but,
then- Yeah.
but
My
let's
fault.
clarify. You didn't cause COVID, though, right?
No, no.
Yeah.
Not the Mayo virus or anything.
The Mayo virus.
Oh,
No, nope. Well, hopefully when all this madness is over, we will be back, the Fab Five, live and in person.
Yeah,
sure.
and we need a rematch against Lewison on our trivia contest anyway.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I thought you were going to take him, kid.
I know. And,
We-
and
you know what?
I came close.
You really did. We should have just called it and ended it.
I know. After that, I was going, down the escalator, and a woman was coming up the escalator, and she yelled at me, "Damn it, I was rooting for you."
You know, we really missed our opportunity with that too. We should have shut that thing down. What was
Yeah.
that?
But that's where we first met Ethan Alexanian.
That's
Hey,
what it was.
Ethan.
But that's okay.
Shout out to
because
Ethan.
during the rematch, we'll
Yep.
know when to shut it down.
That's right. Exactly. Oh,
Very
man.
good. Very good.
All right, then. So why don't we just give everyone our contact information and let us know what's in store for each of us.
All right.
We'll start with Joe.
just have to contact me in the comment section if you like. You can talk to me there on YouTube for my channel, Mean Mr. Mayo, and follow all my crazy videos that I do and my serious videos about music, my record store, haunts and hunts, and all kinds of comedy that I will do on the side. But at the end of the day, Beatles is the main topic. It's all the Beatles on my channel. So I hope you'll subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subs. And when I do, I'm going to be doing a contest to celebrate. And you can win either money or a prize.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Wow. And you're a busy
Thank
guy.
you.
It seems like you have a video every day now.
Well, yeah.
He's so modest.
What you do is you try to stockpile. I learned to do that as I go on. You know, when you have the time, make a few, and then release one a day, every other day, or something like that. Keep it going.
Hmm.
Because you know, when you watch TV, if there's something you like, you want to see content, you want to see programming. You don't want to have a show you enjoy and they don't have anything.
Hmm.
That's how I look at it.
I want to
And
binge
you're
watch.
absolutely right. Absolutely right. Tom, how about you?
Well, we've been busy, as you all know. Our episodes with oh boy,
He doesn't even remember.
I don't even remember. I was,
French
I
Schubert.
know. Yeah. Anyways,
Lawrence
listen,
Schubert.
Lawrence
They was.
Schubert and Mendelssohn, and you know, we just posted our episode on Wingspan. We took a trip down memory lane and we talked about our thoughts on the Wingspan documentary, soundtrack, and book. So we had a great time with that. And I'm happy to say that I just booked drummer Dave Maddox, who did a lot of drumming for Paul throughout the 80s.
Cool.
and on
Nice.
Run Devil Run, and you know, worked on songs such as Through Our Love, Dress Me Up as a Robber, We Got Married, I Love This House. And I'm really excited to talk to him about those David Foster sessions,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
a couple of those
Cool.
songs came from. So be on the lookout for that in November. You can find us, and we got a new website, twolegspodcast.com, and you can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. And please check us out on our YouTube channel as well, Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, and please subscribe there. Thank you all for checking us out.
Okay, Ken, you just mentioned your website. Any other ways to contact you?
Sure. Well, my website, Facebook, you know, call me. I'll talk to anybody
Call me.
anytime. I mean, these are amazing stories that we all love to tell and retell that, you know, are just so meaningful to all of us. And we share this wonderful Beatles community. So I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime. I'm proud of thanks for mentioning my new podcast with Salon called Everything Fab Four, where I talk to people about their Fab Four origin stories. And, you know, sometimes they choke you up. They're heartbreaking. And thanks for all the work all of you guys do, with you just describing the guests you talk to and that kind of work. Think of how important that's going to be for scholars someday who will no longer have access to these folks that you get to talk to now. So come up with good questions.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
pressure's on.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, Kit, you're next.
All right. Well, of course, as always, you can find me on my website, kiddotool.com, on my Facebook page. I've have a episode up. I just guest starred recently on Anthony Rotuno's podcast. He's a friend of our show. Has a great podcast called Glass Onion on John Lennon, and I was honored to appear on there along with Ken McNabb, who terrific author of the book And in the End. We did a fun episode. This is actually part 1 of 2, where Anthony asked us to rank our favorite John Lennon albums solo and with the Beatles, judging on his contributions on those Beatles albums. A lot harder than I thought it would be, and we had to give our reasons, and we had a fun discussion. So part 1 is up. Part 2 should be up soon. So I'll put up the link on my Facebook page. I'll put it up on Talk More Talk as well. So do check that out. I reviewed Ken's book, actually, which is up on Something Else Reviews. Don't worry, I gave it a good review. And Ken looked worried for a second. And speaking of Ken, coming up November 10th, Ken very graciously asked me to come back to the Tuesday night virtual record club. We're going to be talking about Joni Mitchell's Blue. We had such a fun time talking about songs in the key of life that Ken asked me to come back. So
I've had a lot of great guests who've helped us out with it. We're in our 5th season, believe it or not, of Tuesday Night Record Club.
Wow.
And none of you guys will be surprised. They didn't love anybody like they love Kid O'Toole. And they didn't even know she was the queen of all Beatles media yet.
No, they didn't. Ken told them. So
yeah, like 5 times.
Yeah, right. So, yep. So that'll be November 10th. So just go on Eventbrite. I'll be posting a link to that on my page. And you can register, and it's absolutely free, just like the last time. So, hope you'll join us for that. It's a good time. So I think that's everything. Oh, and you can contact us on we almost forgot us you can go to our website, talkmoretalk.com. You can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com, and follow us on Twitter at talkmoretalk1. That's the number 1. Please send us your feedback, your ideas, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Please, we need subscribers. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies.
Tell everybody.
Maybe we need to give money or a prize.
Yes,
to borrow from our friend Joe.
Not
Yep.
not as much
money,
as the
by the
Joe
way,
can
money-
offer you.
That's
Money
right.
in the form of a gift card.
not real money.
Not
It
real
takes a
money.
long time to get to 10,000 subs. It doesn't happen that often when I go broke.
That's right.
And Ken, before we get to you, I was just delivered I don't know if you can see it, but new on Paul McCartney Instagram. It's a new picture with 3 holes on the lawn there. So it's
So if
still
we
coming.
follow those holes on
Right.
that lawn,
Yes, you'll be tripped into the hole to go head over to Alice in Wonderland. So
nice.
Nice.
Drink me.
We've been kidding here before the show that there'll probably be a major announcement about McCartney 3 right after the show's over.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so get ready
Because
for that.
that tends to happen,
Right.
Every week when I was doing my live broadcast of every little thing on a Wednesday night, the next day I'd find out something, something new that was major, and I wish I could have said it the previous night.
Right.
But for those of you that'd like to contact me directly, my email address is everylittlething@att.com. Also, I'm pleased to say that I've finally entered the 21st century. As someone whose entire career has been radio and almost all audio, except for this show, I now have finally my own YouTube page, which is Ken Michaels Radio. I put up my first video, which is an interview with Joey Molland of Badfinger, and Joey just released a brand new album called Be True to Yourself. Mark Hudson produced it. Julian Lennon does backing vocals on some of the songs, and Mickey Dolenz does too. Jason Scheff, formerly from Chicago. They were all on the White Album tour. So I did an interview discussing the new album, Beatle Talk as well. And so you can find that at Ken Michaels Radio, my brand new YouTube page. Please subscribe to that. And Joey was a tremendous guest. Great to have him as my first guest. Also, I have a special contest going on my website in which you can win, yes, 3 books all at once, including, we had this guy on our show last time, Dave Morrell. And Dave spent many years as a promo man for different record companies, from Warner Brothers, RCA to Capitol. All throughout the 80s, he worked at Capitol Records. He promoted Press to Play, Flowers in the Dirt, worked on Men Love Avenue and Live in New York City. He has stories to tell about that, stories to tell about how he met the Beatles, especially John. Well, really, he's met all of them and Yoko. And that was a tremendous interview that he gave us on our last show. It'll blow you away.
So many geek out moments during that interview. Just
yep,
between
Tom and Joe
else.
were like this for most of the show. It was awesome.
Plus, Peter Asher's book, The Beatles from A to Z. You all know Peter from being part of Peter and Gordon, a great producer for people like James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt. He has his own show on SiriusXM's Beatles channel. And he does the same thing here. He goes to the alphabet and he'll pick something that'll be, you know, a song or an album or a person that starts with that letter. It's the fun idea that he put into a book. My last copy of this. And then I have Lania Stagg's Recipe Records, a culinary tribute to the Beatles. So you can win all 3 of these, all in one.
Recipes are actually good.
They are.
does it have a yellow submarine sandwich in there?
Probably.
It probably
onions
does.
on
I
it.
don't remember.
Maybe just a club sandwich.
Close.
There's a, thank you. That's very nice. Here, there, in every sausage square. Helter Skelter Skillet. Love,
really
Love Me Too. I don't know what this is. But anyway, I relish her majesty. Relish her majesty. Okay. So I'm sure all those recipes are tempting you right now. If you want to win all 3 books, the special contest starts on my website this Wednesday. So just go to kenmichaelsradio.com for that. Also on my trivia page, you can win Ken's new book, John Lennon 1980. That is a prize there, 1 of 10, as well as that new John Lennon tribute CD from Gem Records.
Cool.
And let's see, I have my latest episode of Every Little Thing premiering this week on many of my radio stations. On the show, I play 2 brand new cover versions of Beatle and solo Beatle songs, one of which has Lawrence Juber on it, the others from the Weaklings. Could it be from this very same CD? It just might be.
Oh, the mystery's too much. The suspense.
It's 1 of 2 songs on that compilation from the Weaklings. And I do a whole set of songs from 2000 to 2009. So, you know, we cover it all on Every Little Thing. And finally, on Things We Said Today, you can go back 1 week when we interviewed this guy right here, Ken Womack. If you can't get enough of Ken, go back to our last show, Things We Said Today, which is on Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube. And next week, we're doing a show on Things We Said Today, where we're interviewing Ashley Kahn, who put together this book, a new George Harrison book called Harrison on Harrison, which I'm currently reading. It's many, I'm not sure if it's all, of the interviews that George Harrison gave in his lifetime.
It's good to have
transcriptions.
Is what it is.
Yeah, it's. Have you read it, Ken?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
I gotta get that.
And it's nice to hear Cozen back again.
Yes, he's excited to be back, and we'll be talking to Ashley next week. That show will be recorded Tuesday. Probably will be up Thursday or Friday. So that's all that's going on there with me. You know, between the 5 of us, you all don't have to leave your house.
No, never.
We all got enough shows to fill up your whole life.
You probably shouldn't leave your house.
No, exactly.
That's true also. But Yeah, so if you can, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio. Also, Two Legs, you can subscribe to that, our
Oh,
show,
my.
and of course,
Me, Mr.
Joe
Mayo.
Mayo's. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We're all over
This is
the
a
place.
show in itself, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Queen will
this-
probably have her own YouTube channel soon.
Oh, my.
You know,
Possibly, possibly.
checking
Not
out red
possibly.
carpets, you know, and stuff like that.
That would be a nice touch.
Yeah.
Go out the red carpet.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Come out with a crown.
Yeah,
Everything.
absolutely. That'll
Yeah.
be my intro.
Graphics would
yeah.
speak themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man.
So this has been great. Ken,
Yep.
thanks for stopping by, and you're welcome anytime
Of
here.
course.
Back
Yes.
soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll in someday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for talking about your book. Again, it's called John Lennon 1980, The Last Days in the Life. Thanks to all of you for watching this show and for your continued support. Thanks to Fab Four Radio for covering
Yes.
all of our shows.
shows.
We should
Thank
never
you.
forget that. Every little
Yes,
thing,
thank you.
things we said today, Talk More Talk and Two Legs,
Two Legs.
all on the same channel. at
And Kids
fab4radio.com.
Monthly Live.
Yep,
Kids
and my monthly
Kids
live show.
Live show. Yeah.
Which is coming up soon in the new edition.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. So thanks to all of you for watching. And on behalf of Kit and Joe and Tom and Ken, I'm Ken Michaels saying thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next time. RX.
Peace and love.
Give us some
Okay.
truth.